A couple things that we'll get out of the way before we begin. First of all, most important, this video will contain spoilers. When it comes to shows like this that are so long and I'm emotionally invested in, I need to vent when it comes to the spoilers. And next thing, if it wasn't already obvious, I'm very emotionally drained after completing this series. In a very good way though, which I'll touch on, but just know that you may see a side of me and try to keep hidden when it comes to making videos, but it might come out when making this. But either way, let's get to the review. I've made plenty of reviews now, mainly over romance anime, and now I've realized that's sort of become my thing. I used to say that I'm a pretty strong shonen boy at the end of the day, but over these past few years, I've really been just consuming some of the best, but also a lot of the worst romance anime. And after completing this one, I think I've realized now what my niche is, my shtick. I'm pretty sure that's romance anime. I mean, now, after like all the videos I've posted, you know, talking about like Angel Beats, Golden Time, Quintessential Quintuplets, Date Alive, like all these different romance anime that I've covered now on the channel, I've realized now that it's the genre that's taken the most out of me emotionally. Now, of course, I still love my shonen. I love my mindless, senseless action with a good touch of story. In recent time, I've realized I am leaning more towards the romance anime in terms of overall enjoyment and love. Now, of course, I normally would be wearing my culture hat for this one, but I decided, I wanted to stick with, I decided to go for a Kyo-Soma cosplay. This white button-up is so versatile, man. I've used it for so many different things. It doubled as a Shinji cosplay, and now it's a Kyo cosplay. I'm also deciding not to wear it for this video because, it's culture, it's plot, those kind of shows. But for this one, it's fallen under the category of perfection. And of course, I should probably be stating by now what show this is, but I mean, title, thumbnail, already gave it away. But I'm of course today talking about Fruits Basket. It's a show I've known about for a while. It's always sort of been on my list, but surprisingly, it's one that I haven't really heard about. And that's an interesting thing about what's been happening with me recently when it comes to consuming anime. I talked about how I grew up on Dragon Ball Z, and but it wasn't really until high school when I started really consuming different anime other than just being solely Dragon Ball. And it's only been in recent years that I've been branching out and consuming a lot of the bigger named properties and whatnot. Case in point, I didn't watch Evangelion until a couple months ago. But Fruits Basket, it's one I've heard about for a while, but I've never looked into it really. It wasn't until recently when I really have been starting to go on a big romance anime journey that I was going through my lists and whatnot, and then Fruits Basket popped up and I was like, oh yeah, I should probably give that a shot. And I saw that it had a total of 63 episodes and a movie. Oh, that's gonna be a bit of a commitment. Along came Valentine's Day, and I was like, you know what, I want to start something good, something new. And well, I pulled up Fruits Basket, clicked on episode 1, and I was like, alright, I guess this is how I'm spending my Valentine's Day. And well, I couldn't have asked for a better Valentine's Day. Now, of course, I didn't binge all of it right there and then. Over the course of Valentine's Day, which by the time I'm recording this was last Tuesday, so it took me a total of about a week and 2-ish days. Because normally when it comes to shows that I see are pretty lengthy, or at least longer than, your average show, my go-to thing is I want to get this over with as soon as possible, because I'd rather not stick on it for too long. But as soon as I got into this show, I talked a little bit about it in my Quintessential Quintuplets video, how when it comes to how I watch shows, there's a 3-tier system of the progression of me watching a show. The initial tier that every show falls under pretty much right away is the investment tier. You've sought it out, or you saw it on the page and you decide to click on it, so it's you already are invested in a way in which it's all right, this has piqued my interest somewhat. Every show for me falls under that tier at one point or another. But then the next tier, a few shows have surpassed and gone into the next tier, is the hooked tier, which is just the tier of loving what you're watching and just not just watching it for completing its sake. You're watching it for actual enjoyment. And then of course there's the mystical third tier that I talked about, which is, again, I haven't really given a name to, but it's more or less the not wanting to let go stage. Not wanting it to end, but still wanting to see how it ends. Literally anything can be happening on screen and you're loving it. Like, only a handful of shows for me have fallen under that tier. But after watching this show, I've discovered that there is a legendary, unknown to even me in my weird categorical system, a tier that surpasses all tiers. I think this may be one of the only shows that goes in the tier. That being the so into it that you feel like you're a part of it. You're so in the journey that literally a whole episode could be about just the most unimportant side character, but you're so invested in every single second of the show and there's no wasted beat. Like, that's all I can say. Like, even if a show is in like my not wanting to let go tier, there's still stuff where it's just like, yeah, I could skip that. This show, man, Fruits Basket 100% is, it might be the only show that is in this tier, or at the very least it's one of very, very few. There was not one moment in watching it where I felt at all like I needed to fast forward. If anything, there was times where I'm like, I need to rewind. I need this episode to slow down. I need this season to slow down, because every click on next episode is one click closer to the last time I will ever be clicking it for this show. And that time eventually came. I'm such a cocky motherfucker. Like, when it comes to shows that I'm so invested in pretty quickly, I'm just like, oh, I'm so into this. Thank God there's like 20 plus episodes left. Okay, now there's only like 15, 10, 5. There's only one it's over. But this show ended in a way in which it was like, I absolutely didn't want it to end, but at the same time, the way it ended was perfect, and I couldn't have asked for a better ending. For one thing, of course, I know there's the original Fruits Basket and then there's the remake. I'm of course talking about the remake. I haven't dabbled at all in the original one. I kind of want to, just out of curiosity. I'm not gonna jump on it right away because, you know, I need time. Because also, by the time I'm recording this, I literally just finished watching the movie, The Prelude, because last night I had like 5 episodes left and it was like getting close to when I normally turn in for the night. You know what? Fuck it. Like, I can't go to sleep because each episode kept ending in a place I'm just like, I just need to see it. Safe to say I did not sleep well last night. I mean, I slept fine, it's just I had a lot on my mind, which normally I would give like a day or two before I post a review about it, but I need to talk. Because normally my reviews, like, I give like a synopsis and whatnot, but this is mainly just for me to talk about just my experience and what this show did to me overall, because there's a lot to unpack here. When I first heard about and saw, like, you know, just a couple images and whatnot of Fruits Basket, I originally was like, it just seems like one of those moe, eccentric, just pretty boy, who's gonna end up with the girl kind of show. When it initially started, I was like, is this a reverse harem that we have going on? Interesting. I'm curious why it's 60 plus episodes, but that quickly though, I won't say quickly, by the end of season 1, about a third of the way through the show, it stopped being that. At the beginning of the show, it's definitely trying to make you think it's just like, oh, Yuki or Kyo, who's gonna end up with Toru? Or maybe it'll be Shigure. You know, it plays with a lot of those like tropey things, but like it's about like towards the latter half of season 1 that it starts really honing in on the true tone and emotions that it's going for. Well, I mean, even still, like early on in the season, there's still a lot of like heart-wrenching, like sad moments. It's like, oh, okay, this is gonna be one of those. Like anytime it's a show like that, I'm immediately like, oh, it's Clannad all over again. There were a lot of comparisons to Clannad in this that I was making. But it was only a couple things, like, you know, obviously, like, for one, like the tone, it had like that kind of story where it's just like it kept showing you this visual at the beginning that didn't really make sense when you first watch it, but then looking back with all the context and everything, it's like, oh, that's what that means. And it's also the music. I gotta look it up because I swear, like, the composer for Clannad and Fruits Basket must be the same person, right? Jeez, it's almost like I have a computer right here where I can just look it up. Fruits composer Masaru Yokoyama. Okay, it's not the same person. If you've watched either of those shows, you get what I mean, though. Like, a lot of the music when it was playing, watching Fruits Basket, the first couple notes, I'm just like, I'm taken back to Clannad for a moment. I'm like, like, there's one song that plays where the first couple notes are like, dun, 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 dun. Dango, dango, dango. Kind of hurting me a bit. Like, obviously, I gave a spoiler warning, and absolutely, like, you need to watch Fruits Basket. I'm not just saying that so you have context for this video, I'm saying that for your own benefit. I absolutely think that this show is something that anyone who's anybody who loves anime or is just into the romance genre in general should watch. Does it have like some tropey stuff? Tropey only in the sense that in the beginning and in a couple scenes, like Toru, like just on the onset, is very much like that typical romance boy harem female lead, you know, where she's like an airhead, but she's very like bright, bubbly, too happy to be a real person. But having a character like that absolutely opened her up to some of the most emotional and heart-wrenching, tear-jerking scenes I've ever seen in fiction. Like, I was tempted coming towards the end of season 3, where I was like, should I be reacting to this? Like, that's how I know it's in a tier of its own, when I'm reacting to it without, like, actually doing a reaction to it. Like, you know, I'm doing, like, some of the crazy shit. Then I was just like, no, this isn't a side that I'm ready to show the internet yet. It's a side of me that I've talked about, like, you know, I've talked about, like, in Love is War and other romance shows I've covered. Like, it turns me into a giddy teenage girl. I wasn't necessarily giddy, but I mean, I was definitely, like, hyped. There's a lot of moments where I straight up was just like this, just sobbing coming towards the end of the series. And even just a couple minutes ago when I was finishing the movie, I was like that again. I think it's just because this show, I mean, it has a large cast of characters. I mean, I should probably talk about the plot, I guess. The plot, in the most basic of terms, it's following the story of Toru as she meets and interacts with all these characters who all are possessed by the animal spirit of the different animals of the zodiac. And they transform into those animals if they are touched by someone of the opposite gender. Like, our main three are Yuki, Kyo, and Shigure, who are the rat, cat, and dog zodiacs respectively. And then of course you meet like all the other characters, like, you know, you meet the horse, you meet the dragon, who's a seahorse, but the monkey, the rabbit, and the tiger. Like, it's just a cool thing early on in the series when I was watching. I'm just like, ooh, so like, who's gonna be this animal? It's just, all right, we've met all these ones, like we still haven't met like the rooster, and like trying to figure out who maybe is who. And it's just the sad side of that story is just these characters who, you know, can't interact with the opposite gender. As such, they can't really love. There are like a couple cases though where it's like some of the Zodiac members, they love other Zodiac members, so it's like that works out. There's still the case of, you know, wanting to break the curse. And it's just the whole overarching story, you realize you just want all of these characters, like even the ones that you maybe don't like as much. By the end, you're like, you just want them to be free of the curse and you want them to be happy. And it was just such a gratifying finale going into the end of the season and the episode that absolutely destroyed me, and it's destroying me right now, where all of their curses are broken and a lot of them immediately go to the person that they love, and they can finally hold them and tell them how they feel because they don't have to worry about that about the curse being revealed and all that. Because like that's another thing about, it's just like, you know, if they get touched, they turn into the animal. It's a secret thing, so only like the people of the Zodiac and then like the family that serves them and whatnot. Then of course there's the character who serves as God, who they all are meant to be tied to, and that's where the bond, the curse comes from. All I'm saying is just when you get to the ending and their curse is broken. Like, one of the scenes is where one of the characters has been waiting to tell someone that they've loved this whole time that they love them, until they were waiting until their curse was broken, and then the second that their curse was broken and they realized that, they immediately hugged that person and was just like, I love you. I mean, for one, it's easy for a show to do something like that, where it's like, of course, like, for one, it has the benefit of being a remake, so it has a lot more freedoms and liberties. You know, it has like the full source material to adapt. You know, it's a lot longer. You know, it's 60 plus episodes, so it gives you a lot more time to be invested and give a shit. All right, fuck it, I don't care. If you've made it to this point of the video and you haven't watched Fruits Basket by now, this is the point where I'm gonna say, please stop watching. I just need to talk about a couple things that are going to absolutely just spoil the end and a lot of stuff about the show. So for your own sake, if you're at all interested in the series, please just do yourself and me a favor. Go watch it and then come back, because this series is worth it, I promise. All right. Spoiler warning going forward. Every member of the Zodiac ends up with somebody to some degree, or at least there's someone where it's just like, oh, they're probably gonna end up together. Of course, like, the obvious ones like Haru and Rin, sorry, like, I'm used to saying Rin for that name because of fate, but whatever. You know, they were already together like before all of the events of this series, and Rin absolutely had like one of the darkest stories in the whole thing. Like, she was the one that was done the most dirty, but I'm glad in the end she was at least someone who was able to smile and be with the person she loved. Same with Haru. And then of course there was Hiro and Kisa, which Hiro, of course, like, it's done intentionally. He's one of the characters when he initially shows up, it's like, all right, just shut up, kid. But he almost immediately turns into one of the characters that I loved the most. Just like how much he secretly cares for everybody. He pretty much is, you know, a kid tsundere. But of course there's also, you know, he loves and absolutely adores Kisa. She's pretty much like the Eri of this. It's just like, she's so adorable, she's so small, you must protect. It just hit me so hard because Hiro's curse was broken before everyone else's, or like before most of the rest of them. So it's like when his broke, because he's just able to hold his baby sister, he's able to hug his mom finally. It's just one of the things I heard was there was a scene later where he's with Kisa and she's like, oh, I'm glad your curse is broken. A lot of the realizations of what's about to happen in the show hit me like right before they happened. Just the thing of like, oh shit, it's like his curse is broken, but hers isn't. Like before, since they both were Zodiacs, they were able to touch and like, you know, hug each other. But now that his curse is broken, hers isn't. Thankfully, there wasn't a scene where she hugged him and transformed, because I think that would have destroyed me. Their relationship and bond was something I absolutely just loved watching as well. And then of course there's Ayame. There's a couple of names I'm not struggling to remember, but Yuki's older brother and his work assistant Mine. That was the one where I was talking about how as soon as his curse was broken, he immediately confessed to her. It's like, it hurts in such a good way, bro, because like you can tell like just how long he was waiting, and even she was waiting, even though like she's an outsider to some degree. I imagine she knew. Like, that was one of the scenes that immediately just broke me. And then of course there's like Shigure and Akito's weird relationship. Like, it's by the end where it's just like, is Shigure bad? I mean, he definitely is. It's just weird by the end. He's just like, yes, Akito, I will keep loving you so long as you keep loving me. You know, wide variety of relationships here in Fruits Basket. And then of course there's the sad story of fuck, I'm forgetting her name. Kagura, that's right. Then of course there's the sad story of Kagura and Kyo. I mean, mainly just Kagura in terms of sadness. She's one of the few who actually gave a shit about Kyo. I mean, the whole meme throughout the majority of the show is just her open love for Kyo. Then as we get towards the end, there's the emotional scene where Kagura realizes that she's not going to be the one that ends up with Kyo, and she knows that she has to stop, and you know, she just lays it all on Kyo. It's phenomenal. She's one of those characters by the end where it's just like, I hope you find happiness. And there's a thing maybe where it's like her and Momoji, maybe, because you know, it's like her heart broken because she had to leave Kyo, his heart broken because he had to leave Toru. I don't know. Then there's of course like Monkey Dude, but he was in like 2 episodes total. But the 2 relationships in the series that I was rooting for, one of them not the entire time, because one of the characters literally wasn't introduced till like the last half of season 2. Just the 2 relationships that had me bawling the most by the end. That's of course Yuki and Machi, and then Kyo and Toru. One of the few things I knew about Fruits Basket, I knew about Toru and I knew about Kyo. Like, I knew about an orange-haired male protagonist. I didn't know about anything else, really. So just based off of that, I was going into it like, okay, so surely they're the ones that end up together, right? But towards the beginning of the series, it's mainly a lot of Yuki and Toru scenes. So I'm like, maybe not? I don't know. So I was subtly in the back of my mind rooting for Kyo the entire time, just because I was like, I'm not gaslighting myself, right? Gaslighting myself based on information that I know nothing about. By the end of season 1, it's like, oh, yeah, it's Kyo. One of the ones I mainly want to talk about is Yuki and Machi. That was a relationship that just the whole time it was developing and happening, I'm like, wow, good for both of you. Because a good couple episodes actually that Yuki has where he talks about like his whole backstory in life and then ultimately how he feels towards Toru. By the end he realizes it's like, oh, I don't love her as a woman. I love her like a mother. And I was like, wow. Damn. And it's just so gratifying by the end when he finally like is able to admit that to her. But the Yuki-Machi relationship, because Machi comes into the story, that whole student council like group comes into the story and it feels so jarring at first. It's like, where the hell have you guys been the entire time? Because it's like towards like the middle-ish of season 2 where they come in, but then Machi's introduced and she's like this emotionally unstable character who's like anti-OCD because she like hates perfection. So if there's like a clean stack of books or whatever, she has to knock them over. Pretty quickly you start seeing it's just like Yuki and Machi, the more they interact with each other, it's like, huh, so is that maybe gonna be something? Low-key rooting for it. And then as we get into the final season, there's a lot of scenes where like, you know, Yuki wants to tell her about the curse. They have a lot of scenes alone. And then the ending where, you know, she calls him and just like, hey, you busy? It's just like, yes, I want to see you right now. Like, come on, like, let's meet up. And he goes to her and they start talking, and then inside his mind, God or whatever talks to him is just like, you're the last one, be free, forget about me, enjoy your life, pretty much. And then he immediately like goes and like kisses her and hugs her, and it's like, oh my god, that's so gratifying. Like, it's hard to just really imagine that, like, living your whole life. It's one thing for sure, it's just like a lot of the Zodiacs, they were like kids, like 4 of them that were like already adults, like by the time this story starts. It's like for them, it's even worse that they can't interact with someone of the opposite gender like their entire life. But for the kids, it's like it hit even harder. Like they finally are able to start their life. This show did such a good job because there were so many couples by the end, and then you realize like you were rooting for all of them the entire time. They all finally get their chance to live their life. And that's ultimately the beauty of this show. And then of course there's, you know, the last couple, Toru and Kyo, which, is there much I need to talk about there? I mean, it's the main couple. So many scenes in episodes in the final season, and even in the series as a whole, with Kyo and Toru, where it's just like, fucking break this curse already, guys. Like, I need these two to be together. And just that scene at the hospital where it finally breaks. He just rips that stupid fucking rosary off his hand. It's scenes that I'm gonna be rewatching in episodes. I'm gonna be rewatching forever. It's done so well. It's just like you have that investment from the very beginning. It's gonna be interesting when I'm watching like other reviews and people talking about this show. Like if anyone's talking any sort of shit, just why? It's one of those shows where like if there's any problems, like I didn't fucking notice them. I was too blinded by the amazing characters and story of this show. I just didn't want to stop watching. But unfortunately, all good things do come to an end. It did an amazing thing at the ending. It made me like do a triple take when it like did a flash forward in the future where there's this girl running in a hallway with toys, and it's just like, oh shit, is that their daughter? She asks like, oh, where's Toru and Kyo? And it's just like, oh, she's referring to them by name, so it's probably someone who's living with them. And then the girl at the sink is just like, you know, you shouldn't call them that. You should call them grandmother and grandfather. I'm just like, you hit me with the triple take. It just ends that shot of old Toru and old Kyo just walking through a field, holding hands. One can only dream. Like, that's the funny thing about a lot of these romance shows. It's just like, where's the realistic turn for a lot of these where it's like you go through this whole romantic arc, you know, the end, they confess, they get together. Where's the sequel where they break up for stupid reasons because they have like one argument? Or no, the girl's just like, let's break up. Why? Because fuck you. Then it wouldn't be good, would it? That's just my cynical take on it. Fucking Fruits Basket. End of the day, what would I rank it? 10 out of 10 is too low. 11 out of 10. fuck it, 12, 15, a million. I mean, it's easy for someone like me. It's just like, if the show makes me cry, chances are it'll be remembered. But it's not even just that. It's just everything about it. The characters, the story, the music, voice acting, animation, art direction, OPs, EDs, compositing, direction. This show was perfect, and I can't recommend it enough. Now, either way, I'm going to go cry more, probably rewatch some scenes, try to maybe watch something else, maybe some mindless just action or some shitty ecchi show, try to clear my mind and just think on everything I've just absorbed. Either way, this is just another long rant review. I usually like to keep my reviews short and just, to the point. I mean, as with the quintessential quintuplets video, and now with this, it's like, there comes a point where I just need to spew my thoughts and just what this series did to me, and just hopefully you guys agree or like what I'm talking about. Either way, this was my review of Fruits Basket. Join me for many other one-off reviews, reactions, and whatnot to come soon in the future. Thank you all for joining me on this. I'm Lancer. Thanks for watching.